Hey, hiya guys. Welcome to Akita Mountain. I'm going to give this video business a try, I guess. Now, I've kept the camera nice and distant because I've not really got anything particular finished that's ready to be shown, and I like to kind of show finished things, and I'm not so into presenting, here's another tree I made, here's how I made the tree. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that, that's great, and I love watching and listening to what other people do, but I like to push myself a bit harder. For me it's more about the imagination, and what brings the most to me in this life is pushing my imagination. And Akita here, it's been great because, when I was a young lad, I travelled a lot, and when I say travelled, I wasn't a tourist. I worked in other countries and I immersed myself in the cultures, and I miss that. And the one place I never got to was Japan. I've never been to Japan. I've had Japanese girlfriends. My school was 30% Japanese, and I love the culture, or aspects of the culture. Like anything, there's good and bad in everything. And so the wonderful thing about Akita for me here is to revisit my imagination and see where it can go. And it's a way of travelling without moving. Wasn't that an album? Somebody brought out an album called Travelling Without Moving. Can't remember who that was, back in the 80s, when I was a lad. But yeah, so it's a way of me getting around, because let's put it this way, I'm skint, I live hand to mouth. But there's nothing wrong, it's a choice, it's a choice of life. But it means that I can't travel, I haven't got the money to travel. And it's a wonderful way of travelling, and I travel in the internet, I do my research, and it takes me to Japan, and there's wonderful stuff posted by people, and I can really get into it. And I discover things, I'm educating myself, but most of all, and the most important thing for me, is pushing my imagination. I think that's the greatest joy in life, is to stretch your imagination and see where it can go. And it's boundless, what a joy, You're not limited, it doesn't matter what your outside constraints are. Your imagination is free, you're free there, and you can do whatever you want. And part of that, it expresses in our modelling, and I think that's why modelling is such an incredible format of expression. It's there you create, it's your hands speaking. What comes out through your hands is that. And it's just magical, And I find that also in my sculptures. I sculpt art, I sculpt wood, make a piece of art. But I actually find the modelling more captivating, because I actually feel there's more to it. When I sculpt a piece of wood and I manage to get it to speak, and it says a lot, but it never quite says as much as one of my models. And that, to me, is to go there and lose yourself in this little world. And my little world here, it sort of borders on sort of an off-centre of perception. It's not exactly, it's off-centre of reality. It's not real. You're not going to see this in real life. You're going to see aspects of it, but where it's going isn't reality. And yet, when you bring all the different aspects together, it represents a reality that exists, but in itself it's not. And I think that's what a lot of us achieve in our modelling, is a representation of reality. It's not a miniaturization of reality. It's because if you look at all the different things, like the radius of our curves and the way we position landscapes and stuff, you don't see a lot of that in reality, if ever. But in the model form, we can do that and we can represent that reality, and that's fun. You know, and I get a lot of people, a lot of my friends who come and visit and others, and they feel, when they look at this, they feel it's real, but they know it's, yeah, they feel like it's a miniaturization of reality, but they know it's not. But it's that feeling that it conveys that's so much fun. And it's, I often ask, how close can our modelling get to being art? It's one of those things where, to me, art is something that says more than the sum total of what it is. And I think we can get pretty close to that, you know, because when you capture that feeling, that's art. I think that's what art is. I'm not sure on this one, but I think, to me, that's what art is. And the big side as well is it's fun, you know, it's huge amounts of fun. And we've really lost the ability to play in our lives. And a lot of people who sort of don't condemn modelling, but sort of look down on it a bit, frown upon it, is actually, I think it's almost a form of jealousy that they're not able to connect with their playfulness. And our playfulness brings such joy, and if you have got joy in your life, what have you got? And I think joy is the key aspect to staying alive. That's what life is. It's the joy of living. And through playing, we can connect with that joy. And that's a wonderful thing. Truly wonderful. Yeah, it's a funny thing, art. Somebody once said to me that art is painting the wind. And I think, can we model the wind? That's an interesting one. You know, can we model smell? And of course we can't, but we can. And we can through representation. And that's, you know, I like to be able to look at the pine trees and feel you can smell them. You know, that lovely smell of pine and earth and, you know, wet earth after the rain. You know, rain, wet earth in the sun. That's what I was trying to say. You know, when the sun hits wet earth, oh my goodness, it just brings you back. It's wonderful. A wonderful, wonderful thing. And then there's that leads on then to presentation as well. You know, we create these objects, but how far do we go towards presenting them? And I feel that's a really overlooked aspect of our hobby. And it's so important because, well, I think the most important thing is just to enjoy what we're doing. But when we work hard to recreate something, then I think probably 40% of it is in presentation, and so much wonderful work is lost because we don't see it. You know, we don't see the work because we're distracted by the mess around. And when you go to an art gallery, you'll find everything very calm. You know, everything's white. There's very basic lighting. The lighting's just focusing you on the object itself. And that's why Akita's sitting in this little cabinet here, which isn't finished yet. I'm still waiting for some nice, I've ordered some Japanese hinges for the doors. It's going to have doors to close it, and a nice little oriental latch in the middle. It's going to be in itself a piece of art. And then you'll open the doors, and the doors and the framework is there to put a boundary, and that boundary helps you focus on what's in it. And an interesting thing, you want to try this, is when you're outside or looking at your model railway or something, take your hands and you make a little frame like this, okay? Just put your fingers together. Close one eye and look through that frame. and you'll see another world, simply because it's framed. It's focusing you onto that point. And another one you want to try is stand with your legs spread slightly and bend over and look through your legs and watch how the world changes. And it's just a different form of presentation, and when you can see the difference through presentation, that will show you just how important it really is. And I think that's something that really needs, it's fun to explore, not just our little creation, but the presentation of our creation, which also leads on to another thing that I kind of struggle with, but it's an interesting one. It's the waste that goes on with our model railways. We create something, we spend all this time, we create this beautiful thing, and more often than not, it gets scrapped. And quite often it gets scrapped before it's even finished. And it's twofold, really, the issue there. One is waste, and we've got issues with waste in this world of ours. We're a very wasteful animal, and I think we're the only animal that really wastes. Cats do. I've got 2 cats, and they hunt, and they'll just play, and then they won't eat what they've caught. That upsets me. But it's also the wastefulness of this going in the bin. But if everybody kept everything that they created, our world would just fill up with objects. And, well, the whole thing about Buddhism, is let go of your objects, and to let go of attachment. So, okay, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing to be able to let go of things. But when those things are polluting, then I've got some issues there. I'm struggling with that one. And like, I used foam, expanded foam, as the basis for the landscape. And I have a feeling that my future creations are going to be in cardboard. And that way, and more of my buildings in paper and wood. Well, actually, I find paper better than wood, especially in N-gauge. Wood just doesn't scale down properly, or very rarely. It always looks a bit rough. And I notice that even on the most beautiful laser cut buildings, they still have that slightly too rough look. Really, and that's what's nice with these some of these are paper models from Japan. And this little guy here is just made of paper. And the texture of paper is right. It's the right scale. The texture of wood does not scale down far enough, which is okay for some things, but for me it doesn't feel right. So I think paper is going to play a lot more of a role in my modelling, and plastic out. I've got a couple of plastic kits on here, which I'm heavily modifying. I'm working on the monastery at the moment, which is going to be great fun. But it's plastic, and plastic doesn't lend itself well to buildings. It's the thickness, it's the fact that it warps. You really have to, if you don't have it thick enough, it warps. And if it's too thin, it needs a serious amount of bracing. And at the end of it, when a layout inevitably ends up in the bin, well, there's something important, is that when you throw something away, is to remember that there is no away. That goes somewhere. And that plastic is going somewhere. And it doesn't break down back into nature. So that's kind of what I liked with a lot of the old locos, like the old River Rossi and stuff. is that they're actually very tough. If you get one that hasn't got zinc pest, that is, and okay, you've got to remotor them, but other than that, the loco's forever. And I would be interested to see how current model locos are going to hold up over 40 years. I'm not talking over 5 years, but you know, some of these River Rossi items are, well, as old as me, older than me. Geez, they're ancient. And they're holding out. I've even got some with the original motors. Okay, they've needed cleaning, and they don't run great, or great compared to some of the newer stuff. But some of the old stuff is really held up well. You know, the Hudson chassis from Kato. To me, it's probably the greatest chassis ever created in N-Gage. I can't fault it. And it's a shame that other chassis aren't based on that. You know, the gears are just coarse enough to not wear out. You know, you can get a bit of grit in there and it's not going to have an issue. And yet, you know, I can get them to creep at one tie at a time on the original motors. That's phenomenal. You know, they really, and they're so tough and they're simple. You can strip them down, you can rebuild them, and they'll just go on. Wonderful. If people could keep along that line, and it's to stop the waste. You know, I'm not tight in any way. I don't have much money, but I'm not at all tight. I'll save and save and save until I can afford something good, rather than head for a cheapie. You know, I say, okay, I've got less things, but at least they're good things. And there's also something about when you wait for something, it heightens your appreciation. And if you can appreciate something more, well, you're getting some more out of it. The whole experience is greater. But we've kind of fallen into this thing of, I want now, I want cheap. And I don't think that we appreciate things half as much as what we could. And if we don't appreciate it, what's the point of having it? It brings a short-term fix. We get a new loco in, we've got all the money to buy it, we just buy it, it arrives in 3 days' time, and we look at it, we love it. 3 months' time, how often are we looking at that loco and enjoying it? Which brings me around to scratch building. And when you build something yourself, that's my Hudson here, the N-scale Canadian Pacific Hudson I made last year. And that took me, 4 months to build that loco. And it's not down here to be on the camera, it's down here because even though I'm working on Akita, I'm just staring at it. I'm staring at it, I just, whoa, I made that? And I'm looking at its little details, and it's bringing so much. And I think that brings me back around to the whole thing with the hobby, of how much we put into it. And the less we buy, the more we appreciate. And that's, I've bought a fair whack actually for Akita, oddly enough. More than any other layout I've built. You know, in all my other layouts I made card kits. Built them myself. And on Akita here, I was a bit out of my depth, which is a strange thing to say, having been modelling all these years. The thing is that I struggled with proportions on the buildings. You know, never having visited Japan and struggling to get plans of Japanese buildings. It was very hard then to get the feel. And I feel now, having bought a few kits, there's probably 2 on here which I shan't use, but I'm just using as a sort of template in a way to get the feel of Japanese architecture. Because although I've got several books on Japanese architecture that I love and I study, when you've got a little 3D model in your hands, as you know, it shows you another aspect. It's something that you can't get out of a book or off the internet. And so I feel if ever do another Japanese model, I won't be buying any of the buildings. I shall make them all myself, because I've now got the feel for them. And that's, yeah, that upsets me a bit about my layout. But like I say, I'm slowly replacing them with homemade variants. Excuse me. And it's going to take longer, and that's why I've not been posting recently. You know, I'm working a lot on the kits that I'm keeping. I'm seriously modifying to get more out of them. And yeah, that's what brings it about up to date. Like I say, you'll be getting posts and updates when I complete scenes. You know, so like, for example, the tea house up here. When it's done and it's speaking and it's got a story, then you're going to know about it. But I don't want to just post it saying, here it is so far. I want to do something different. There's enough of that on the forums, and wonderful stuff, and I read it all. Oh boy, I go through other people's stuff. It doesn't matter what the standard of modelling, it's just modelling. It's seeing what other people are doing, how they're doing it, what they're getting out of it, and what it's bringing to me. And I hope that this little bit of crazy northern Japan, well, I hope it brings a smile to some people. So, cheers to you all, and take care. See ya.